I should have listened to my lawyer and not watched this DVD. It didn't help at all. It only affected me and I was destroyed. It was over weeks ago. I could have just left it in the safe and not watched it. My anger would have remained the same, the sense of betrayal would have remained, but my soul would have been intact. But I couldn't leave it alone. It was like an itch I had to scratch. The year before, I had noticed a slight change in my wife. She started dressing better, spending more money on clothes I didn't think possible, and started staying out later with what she called girls. I don't know how 5 middle-aged women can consider themselves girls, but whatever. The most important sign was that she was happy. My wife was a self-centered harridan, and happiness was not on her list of useful qualities. Until then. She became even colder to me and the kids. It wasn't as awful as it could have been. We were used to our house being the place she came to sleep and our family being a verbal punching bag. Now she didn't even pretend to care. Didn't call to say she'd be late. Didn't make the kids' meals. After I got a printed Amazon gift card for my birthday left on the dining room table and she didn't show up until 11 o'clock that evening, I decided enough was enough. When the kids told her about our trip to Buca di Beppo to celebrate and asked why she didn't show up, she rushed to put them to bed. Her face was red. You couldn't wait? You just couldn't wait for the weekend? I'm bad now. It's just bloody marvelous. Dad's a damaged hero. Again. I sat with a Shiner Bock in my hand and looked at her. You've got to be kidding me. We didn't leave the house until 7. We waited for you for an hour and a half. Did you even check your messages? Your daughter called you 3 times. You know what? Go to hell. Why did you even come home? Next time, just stay there. I rose to my feet, slightly drunk after the red wine at dinner and 3 beers in a row after we got home. I climbed the stairs to the bed, stripped down to my underwear, and crawled under the covers. She came in 15 minutes later. I don't know if she felt guilty or if it was an attempt at a birthday present, but as she lay next to me, she reached into my boxers. I couldn't remember the last time I had yelled at her, and I guess she decided that reconciliation was what was needed. I know we've been a little distant lately, honey, but we can work things out. You know I love you. We haven't had sex in over 5 weeks, and we haven't made love in years. I would have liked to roll over and ignore her, but I wasn't that strong. When she kissed me, I kissed her back. I kissed her ear and moved down to her neck, ruffling her negligee. My lips reached her collarbones when I smelled that scent, Eros by Versace. The scent was faint, probably hours old, but it was there. I used Fierce by Abercrombie & Fitch, but my kids gave me a bottle of what I smelled on her for my birthday. I shouldn't have been surprised by the aftermath, but it was unexpected and slapped me in the face. I felt the Italian food rise to my throat, ran to the bathroom, and lost my dinner. After rinsing my mouth out, I sat on the toilet trying to think. Anthony? Are you okay? She was at the door. No, I'm not okay, you cheating bitch. I'm sick. I just need a few minutes. Okay, then I'll sleep in the guest room. I don't want to catch anything. Thanks for the comfort and support, slut. All right. What the hell was I going to do? The next morning, I used the computer at the store and found a surprising number of private investigators. Who knew Colorado was a hotbed of illegal activity? How was I supposed to determine which one was the best? I had no idea. I chose the one whose website seemed the most professional. 2 weeks later, I had all the information I needed. She was sleeping with our child's pediatrician. I shouldn't have been surprised. Most likely, she wanted to elevate her status. He was divorced, in his late 40s or early 50s. Dr. Burroughs had a lot of money, and that's all she cared about. She was self-serving, and I had known that for at least 10 years. Her brother was Jerry Hernandez, a legendary middleweight boxer. He bought us a house when we got married, and we lived on the same block as her other siblings and her mother. Jerry bet on me when I quit my corporate job and became a professional glassblower. He bought all the equipment I needed and owned 10% of my business. When I paid him back, he got his share back. I made good progress. Working as an artist rather than a commercial coward made me happy, but not my beloved wife. It was too risky financially until I bought her a BMW. She calmed down, but still wasn't thrilled about having to tell her friends that I was an artist who worked in a backyard workshop. Every time I tried to pay off her brother, she complained, "He doesn't need money, he's rich." One day I tried to explain that it wasn't that he needed the money. If she understood, which I doubted, she didn't care. Any money we got was ours, and she'd be damned if it went to someone else. Strangely, this outlook didn't extend to other people's money. She was constantly making Jerry pay for it. It took me 6 years to pay off my brother-in-law with the money I kept from my wife. He always tried to refuse the payments I made every few months because that's the kind of man he is. I kept making the payments because that's the kind of man I am. When Jerry was dying and lost his money, he could no longer help her. The house was in her name, and she put it on the market right away. A few weeks later, we moved to Pueblo. The small town where we raised our children was too provincial for her. I think she saw her brother one more time before he died. I took the kids to see him almost every weekend. She claimed to me that I made her look bad by going without her. So yes, I knew who and what my wife was. Unfortunately, I still loved her. I think I loved her until I walked into the doctor's office. Her car was in the parking lot, so I knew she was there. The kids were old enough to make their own dinner and be unsupervised for a while. His clinic was located in an office complex with other white-collar firms. The door to his office was locked, and I nearly dislocated my shoulder when I decided I was macho enough to kick it open. Bouncing away from the door, I grabbed a fire extinguisher that was nearby and slammed the metal canister into the doorknob several times. After a minute, the door opened and I was inside. I could hear Camille moaning from the next room. The clowns and Disney characters that adorned the walls seemed to mock me as I approached the adulterous couple. Her increasing moans and pleas led me to a second room in the corridor of examination rooms for sick children. He had her bent over the table. The doctor was at an odd angle, trying to minimize contact with his huge belly. The sickening sounds of slapping flesh made me nauseous and furious. Is this what she was cheating on me for? They weren't even aware of my presence until I wrapped my forearm around his throat and pulled him back. I threw him against a cabinet littered with cotton swabs, tongue spatulas, and other supplies, most of which fell to the floor. He was shockingly silent, looking at me with his mouth open. She wasn't that quiet. Anthony, get out of here! Get out of here! I haven't been in a fight since 4th grade. I wasn't a retired Navy SEAL. I didn't even take boxing tips from Jerry. Punching Dr. Burroughs hard in the stomach, I felt something twist wrong in my wrist. With my other hand, I pinned his head against the cabinet. Why? I have no idea. I must have hit him with my fist or something. The bitch kept yelling, "Get out! You're ruining everything!" She started pounding on my back. Her fists were probably more effective than mine. I punched Burroughs in the face with the back of my hand and kicked him in the shin. I'm not a very good fighter. He was covering up as best he could. I guess he sucked at fighting, too. Pulling myself together, I began to feel a throbbing in my arm and wrist. I looked around the trashed room. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Spitting on the doctor, I turned to my wife. "Don't come home this time. Just stay away from us." I got out and drove to the hospital. Calling my aunt, I asked her to come and be with the kids until I got home. Nothing was broken in my hand or wrist, but it hurt like hell. They put a bandage on it, gave me a prescription for painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and sent me home. You could see them from the end of the block. I slowed my step and then stopped, looking at the 2 police cars parked outside our house. I thought about turning around and going to a hotel for the night, finding a lawyer and turning myself in, but I was too tired to fight. I just wanted it all to be over. For as long as I could remember, her presence had cast a shroud over our lives, and it had worn me down mentally and spiritually. I'd spend the night in jail, post bail, and take the kids. We could stay at my aunt's house until I can come up with a long-term plan. Yeah, that's not a good plan. When I pulled up, she started yelling and pointing her finger. Half hiding behind the door, she did a great job of pretending to be scared. Under her left eye, she could see a bruise that would likely be black and blue the next day. A ball of lead settled in my stomach. The bitch was setting me up. I shut the car off with my hands in front of me and slowly walked out into the driveway. The cops behaved professionally. One of them kept his hand at his holster, and the other walked slowly toward me and spoke. "Mr. Anthony Caddo?" "Yes. I admit to breaking into that bastard's office and punching him in the face, but I never touched my wife. I suppose I'm going to be arrested?" Looking at my house as I was being handcuffed, I saw my aunt leading my oldest son away from the window. My wife, the bitch, smirked as the officer put his hand on my head to make sure I got safely into the back seat of the car. The only authorized phone call I made was to my cousin Mateo. We grew up together and were more like brothers than cousins. He found me the best lawyer in town and arranged for my bail. I couldn't get within 500 feet, 150 meters of the bitch or my kids. There was no way I could contact them. Thanks to Mateo's lawyer and Dr. Burrows, who didn't want fathers to know he was sleeping with his patients' mothers, I served only 60 days and got a lengthy parole. It could have been worse, but not seeing my kids was killing me. After my release, I got supervised visits, 1 hour a week, with supervision paid for by myself. Mateo loaned me enough money to put a down payment on a house. It was the same house where we raised our children. The building of my old workshop was still there, and I had to take the sheriff with me when I picked up my tools and equipment from the house where the bitch and my kids still lived. Like a wounded animal, I crawled back to where I felt safe. This was where I was happiest. I started working again, and Mateo became my biggest client. I don't know exactly what he did for a living. I had a rough idea, though. He did what we did when we were kids. He found people who had something to sell, found people who needed what was for sale, and brought them together for a percentage of the sale. Did I think it was legit? Not at all. Mateo had a knack for bringing the right people together, and as long as it didn't hurt innocents, he didn't care what he negotiated. He commissioned me to work on high-end vases and paid me exorbitant fees. In turn, he sold the vases to the people he helped, and they paid him huge sums of money per vase. According to the accounting, he was now getting money from selling vases that should have been worth less than $1,000 for tens of thousands of dollars. The divorce was going through the entire court system, and now the bitch was insisting on unsupervised visits. It amazed me how long it took her to make this move. Now that she actually had to become a mother, she didn't care. If she could shift the kids to me sometimes, it gave her the freedom to go off and do whatever and whoever she wanted. The previous year, I had made $52,000. Not bad, but not great either. The cost of living in our neighborhood wasn't too high, so the bitch didn't have to work. We lived on the lower end of comfort. Her lawyer used that amount to gouge me for child support and alimony. I asked that Mateo withhold my salary or share or whatever you want to call it. With his orders, I expected to make a little over $125,000 that year. I would argue with her about the percentage she was getting of the $52,000, but I wouldn't fight it too hard. When the divorce was finalized, she sent me a long letter. I didn't open the envelope, but it seemed to me that it must have contained at least 5 sheets of paper. I knew her, so I guessed what they would say. I was a loser, should have made more money, overreacted to Dr. Burrows' thorough medical examination. It was all my fault. I took it to my workshop and turned it to ashes with a blowtorch. A few weeks went by, and I still couldn't stop thinking about that DVD. It was like Chinese water torture, always there, always knocking on the door of my mind. Cap. Had she told him about me? Cap. Did he have it better than I did? Cap. Is it all my fault? Hood. Will the DVD tell me why she destroyed our family? Cap. I finally popped it into my laptop and sat down with the 5th installment of Jack. The sight of my wife having an aging Dr. Burrows didn't destroy me. Frankly, it was kind of boring. Normal people don't sleep like porn stars. The end. What stole my life was her words. She married me because Jerry liked me. Her brother was her meal ticket and she wanted him to be happy. That bitch thought she was making a sacrifice for her brother. If she was marrying me to make him happy, she shouldn't have had any trouble sleeping with me. It was depressing, but not heartbreaking. It boggled my mind when she told the good doctor that I was not the biological father of any of our 3 children. Oddly enough, the first thing that came to my mind was, what kind of crazy person thinks that kind of bedtime talk is going to help you find a new husband? The video was detailed enough for me to see him wince, and a look of disgust flashed across his face. I skipped the next visit, not because I liked them any less, but because I got into the bottle and started drinking for days on end. A couple weeks later, Mateo was on my porch. I looked like shit, but so did he. If hygiene was the deciding factor, he'd definitely win. I stared at his bald head and pale skin for too long, and finally he spoke. Are you going to invite me in? Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry. I opened the door for him and looked in the fridge for a beer. Handing him one bottle, I took one for myself, then thought for a moment and put mine back. So, what are you doing here, Mateo? Nothing much. You haven't answered your phone in over 2 weeks. You haven't called anyone. You missed a date with the kids. My mom's pissed about it, and you owe me 4 vases. You smell like a bum, and the house is a mess. But other than that, everything's fine. I sat down on the couch, and Mateo flicked some newspapers off the chair before sitting down too. Talk to me, Anthony. What's going on? I took a deep breath, let the air out, and started. Damn it, the kids. What about the kids? Are they okay? They're not my kids. What the hell are you talking about? Who told you that? My ex-wife. It's on the PI video. She told the doctor. I think the psycho was bragging. On my cousin's face, anger fought with sadness. He paused for a moment before answering. She's a fucking whore. She's a pathetic, lying whore. If she was in a trash can, I'd only go over to close the lid. Screw her. First, we need to get her tested to see if she's telling the truth. And then to hell with her. You raised these kids. You're more of a parent to them than she is. You need to clean yourself up. Shave, shower, eat something sensible, and we'll go talk to your lawyer. You need to seek full custody. Mateo may not have the most extensive vocabulary, but he was my cousin and best friend. While I showered, he cleaned up the house. He had moved my Weber grill to the front of the house and was already pouring charcoal into it when I stepped out onto the porch. Hey, you look human again. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Pueblo to see a lawyer, and then we're going to try to see your kids. We need to get on the radar of CPS, or whoever the fuck determines custody and visitation. Then you'll fly back to LA with me. Barbara will be happy to see you. I'll bring you back here for your next official visit. So that's what we did. We talked to a lawyer who promised to talk to the right people and mitigate any damage done by my missing the visit. This bitch let us see the kids because it allowed her to go out and do what she wanted to do. She stopped me on the way out of the house. Anthony, I need money. Get a job. I have to watch the kids, you idiot. I stopped and counted to 10. Get a part-time job. Be reasonable. It's only money. It's my money, you dirty little bitch. My money. You got everything you're owed. You got a house and a car, and now you want more? I know for a fact that Mateo's mom buys things for the kids. You're not getting a dime more from me. Mateo called out from the driveway. Anthony, let's go. He was right. Staying and talking to her was a waste of time. I turned around and left her standing still. It wasn't about her. It was about my kids. We took them to a movie and dinner. They were happy to see Uncle Mateo, and we all went to my aunt's for dessert. Mateo took 3 pies, 4 gallons of ice cream, and a wad of money for his mom. I wasn't allowed to visit the kids unsupervised, but how could I be guilty if I happened to be around when they were visiting my uncle? We were flying to Los Angeles when Mateo came back from the restroom, sat down, and a small vial of medicine fell out of his pocket. He was covered in sweat, and his hand was shaking as he tried to pick it up. I picked it up. You okay? Yeah, just a little sick. Flu or something. No big deal. I read the label. What's Afinitor? It's nothing. Just take a couple times a day and I'll be fine for 72 hours. Seriously, it's no big deal. Don't tell Barb about this. I don't want her to worry. Okay. We'll pump you full of vitamin C. That'll kick his ass. Maybe some matzo ball soup. He didn't look well, so I was glad to hear it was just the flu. It must have been the end of the illness since he wasn't coughing or sneezing. I hoped it wasn't contagious, after all. We had just spent the day with my kids. We landed, grabbed our luggage, and headed to the parking lot. It felt like there were more people in the LAX airport than live in Pueblo. I offered a prayer to the traffic gods as Mateo drove us out of the airport in his caddy. Since visiting him and Barbara, I had learned to live in fear of the 405. He didn't take his eyes off the road as he talked. Hungry? Sure. Barbara is going to order Thai food, so how hungry are you? If you're asking if I can snack on Thai food after visiting In-N-Out, the answer is definitely. Ha! You're definitely my cousin. All right, meat. We're on our way. We pulled into his driveway, and I stood still for a moment, enjoying the view before unbuckling. I liked his house. It had a cozy feel to it. It was a nice house on a large plot of land. They didn't have children, so they didn't need a lot of space in the house. Everything was done in pastel colors that matched the moldings. They had 2 avocado trees, one in the front and one in the back. The first few years I visited them, I nearly jumped out of my skin when an avocado tree would fall and land on the metal roof over their enclosed porch. It was too perfect. Walk into the backyard, pluck a lemon from one tree and an avocado from another. 20 minutes later, you were already sitting by the pool with the world's freshest guacamole. Barbara met us at the door. A tall, slender woman, she made their house a home. She was born and raised in California, but reminded me of the stereotypical Southern belle. Barb was the epitome of graciousness and comfort. After kissing Mateo, she came over and hugged me. She said quietly in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Anthony. You didn't deserve any of this." Stepping back and holding my shoulders at arm's length, she pushed my blonde hair back from my face and looked into my eyes. "Mateo missed you. I have too. We're happy you're here. If you ever need it, this is your home. You're always welcome." Dropping her hands, she started to turn around, but then looked back. Looking at me again, she frowned and turned to her husband. "You idiots were staying at the In-N-Out, weren't you?" Mateo laughed. "Don't blame me. He cried about it the whole flight. In the end, I had to give in." Barb laughed too, and we sat and waddled around while she enjoyed pad see ew and chicken satay. After dinner, we got to talking, Barb asking about my new, once-old house. We talked about her mother-in-law, which led to a conversation about the kids. Seeing how much it hurt me, she tried to switch the conversation to something more mundane, movies, current events, and the like, to keep the conversation going without throwing me into a wistful melancholy. I smiled, appreciating her efforts. Mateo was lucky. He hit the marriage jackpot while my marriage was a loser from the start. "It's okay, Barb. It hurts, but there's no point in running away from it. Yeah, she set me up, and I spent time in jail. After that, she took most of our property and the house and started getting crazy alimony on the amount of money I was making. I hate her for that, but the kids, that just destroyed me. I honestly don't know what to do. I'm still kind of in a fog." "Well, while you and my husband were having fun, I was doing some work. There should be 3 sets of DNA here by 5 o'clock tomorrow. You swab the kids and we'll find out if she lied or not." I spoke to Mateo's lawyer and he recommended a colleague who specializes in family law. "Have you thought about getting an annulment? You have a video of her admitting that everything was a sham from the beginning and she started cheating right away. If the marriage is annulled, she will stop getting alimony." Stunned, I stared at her. Could this possibly work? Really? That's genius. "Yeah, I don't want her to get a dime." "We're going to see a lawyer tomorrow afternoon. It sounds like you have a good chance of getting an annulment." Mateo spoke. "I have to go to San Diego in the morning for work. Speaking of work, I need those vases, Anthony. We'll put the same equipment in your backyard that we put in the house. Think of it as your workshop away from home." As I looked at him, I saw his left hand trembling on the table next to his plate. He pulled it toward him and dropped it in his lap. Looking up, I found him looking at me and shaking his head slightly. I looked at Barb, then at him, and said nothing. We talked some more before heading to bed. Barb knocked and walked into the guest room while I unpacked. She put pillowcases on the pillows without saying anything while I thought about Mateo. I looked up as she started to leave. "Thank you, Barbara. That was hard. It's good to have a family." Hugging me again, she spoke in my ear. "I'll say it again. You didn't deserve what she did to you. You're a good man, Anthony." When I woke up, Mateo was gone. Angry at myself for not talking to him before he left, I showered and grabbed granola and soy milk for breakfast. Barb and my cousin completely fit the California stereotype. I was hoping we wouldn't have tofu for dinner. He turned out to be right. A duplicate of all my equipment was in the big new shed in the backyard. I worked until about noon when Barbara came in and brought lemonade. She was wearing a light blue sundress with a yellow sash. It went well with her cornstalk-colored hair and blue eyes. I was sweating profusely. Smiling, she handed me a lemonade. "We should be leaving in about 45 minutes. "Okay, thanks. I'll finish up here and take another shower. We met with an attorney who made sure I understood that he was just giving me general information and that if I wanted to move forward, it would have to be an attorney in Colorado. He asked a lot of questions and I gave him as many answers as I could. He confirmed that my case looked good and I was happy for the first time in a long time. Barb tried to pay, but I refused. I had a decent amount of money lying around at Mateo's until I needed it. I paid for the consultation and we had lunch before heading home. It was seafood, not tofu. She noticed my improved mood, and we sat for almost 2 hours talking about old times, laughing at anecdotes from Mateo and I's childhood. He called and said he had to stay the night. I walked out to the pool when Barb hung up and called him. It went to voicemail. I tried again. It went to voicemail again. I sent the message. "Stop screwing around and call me back. Now," he called me back. "I was in the bathroom. Can't a guy take a piss? What's up your ass?" "Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know. I thought you were avoiding me." "What? Mateo, what happened to your hand last night? Was it shaking?" "It was nothing. Remember I broke my arm? There was a little nerve damage, and now that I'm getting older, it haunts me a little when I'm tired. Look, I appreciate your concern, but it's really nothing." "That's it? That's it. Stop worrying about me and get on with the vases." Barb and I changed into our bathing suits and went to the pool. She laughed when I jumped up when an avocado hit a metal plate. Embarrassed, I smiled at her, a little shyly. We enjoyed the white wine and warm water until we started to drift off to sleep. Mateo returned the next morning, and I spent the day in the workshop working on his vases. He opened an account for me where he kept most of the money he paid so the bitch couldn't get her hands on it. There was about $17,000 in there, and I asked him to withdraw $5,000 cash for me. When I wasn't working, the three of us ate, swam, laughed, and talked. The next day was a repeat, and the next day I flew out to see the kids. I met them at the bitch's house, and we spent time together in my old workshop. I spent a lot of the money I got from Mateo on gifts. My kids weren't spoiled and would have been happy to see me without gifts, but they were kids, so they were a little confused. The newest iPhones were a big hit, and my oldest let out something that sounded like, "Yit." I had no idea what it meant, but decided it was a good thing. The social worker told me that this would be the last week of supervised visits, and my time increased to 4 hours every Saturday. After 60 days, that time would be reviewed and possibly increased. She always maintained an aura of professionalism, but was also a sweet woman. I always brought lunch for the kids and a sandwich or something for her. The first few times she refused, but the more she got to know my ex-wife, the more she warmed to me. The social worker watched me closely while I told the kids that I had bought us all memberships to Ancestry.com, a company that runs a network of genealogical, historical records. They asked no questions as I swabbed their DNA. When I was done, she frowned and stopped me as I walked toward the workshop door. "Is there anything I should be worried about, Mr. Caddo?" "I don't think so. Why would you be worried? The kids had a great time, and so did I, of course. Did you see something I didn't?" "Mr. Caddo, isn't one DNA test enough? You made all 3 kids take swabs. You know how kids are. If one of them has one of these things, they all want one. I see them once a week. I didn't want it to get jealous." "Uh-huh. Okay. You have my card. Please call me if you think we need to talk about anything." "I will. Have a good week." As I was getting in the car, a bitch ran down the steps of the house. "Anthony, don't go." She came up to me as I was getting in the car and held the door for me. "Look, I need to get some money. The kids need clothes, and we've got a problem with the boiler. The boiler's under warranty. Call them to come over. I'll have the kids for 4 hours next week. I'll take them shopping." "Anthony, honey, can't you just help me out?" "Look, I'm not your husband anymore, and I'm certainly not your friend. You want money? Get off your ass and get a job. You want someone to give you stuff? Find another sucker. I gotta go. Get your hands off my car." "What about your kids, you selfish asshole?" I sat there pissed off. I took my eyes off the wheel and stared at her. "My what? Did you say my kids?" There was a look of fear on her face. I knew her. It wasn't fear of being found out, not fear of being embarrassed. It was fear of losing child support. She let go of the car door. I slammed it shut and got out of the car. Sitting in the airport waiting for my flight back to Los Angeles, I called my roommate, Jennifer Cruz. Hi, Jennifer. It's Anthony. Hey, Wanderer. How you doing? I'm good, thanks. Listen, I'm going to be in LA for a while. Can you do me a favor? Pick up the mail and keep an eye on the house? Sure. Listen, can you make those little glass things that people put in their windows that refract light? Yeah, I can make them. Why, do you need some? No, I heard the councilwoman Cumberly wants to order 100 for Christmas for her major donors. I thought you could give them your information and stick your foot in the door. Jennifer, how do you know all this? Oh, you know I keep my ear to the ground. Okay, well, thanks for the heads up and keeping an eye on the place. I'll be back next week. Mrs. Cruz had a heart of gold, but she was a gossip columnist on steroids. She always knew what was going on in everyone's business. Barb made dinner for me, and Mateo picked me up. Traffic wasn't as brutal on weekends, and we enjoyed the ride. He spoke while shifting from one lane to the other. Hey, I need a favor. Sure, name it. I need to meet with a few people tomorrow night about a deal, but Barbara has a charity event coming up that she needs to attend. I just found out about the meeting today, and I can't pass it up. Can you take her? Yeah, sure, I guess. Is it formal? Yeah, you can borrow my tuxedo. Tuxedo? Seriously? It's not like this event is for me. You'll be fine. Just stay with Barb and let her talk. Okay, sure. That night, we had dinner, played cards, and went to bed. The next day, I went back to work on the vases, finished at 2 p.m., showered, and shaved. Mateo's tuxedo fit me as if it had been made especially for me. When I left my room, my cousin gave me a wolf whistle. Barbara clapped him on the shoulder. You're looking very well, Anthony. Are you ready to go? She was stunning. In a tight red dress, her slender curves were emphasized and on display. I'd seen her in a swimsuit countless times, but this was somehow different. I froze in place for a moment, and Mateo laughed. That's why you're going, Aunt. You'll be able to ward off all the single guys. Feel free to bring your baton with you. I'm sorry. That was awkward. Barbara, you look amazing. She blushed, kissed her husband, and we left. The drive took 45 minutes. I kept looking back at Barbara and feeling guilty. It had been a very long time since I had been with a woman, and I clearly needed to change that as soon as possible. This was definitely an upscale event, and I was thankful I wasn't wearing one of my suits. I noticed the looks that greeted Barbara and I as we entered the hall, and then the others at our table as we sat down. Jealousy, pride, and shame were waging a fierce battle in my soul, and there was no winner. We introduced ourselves to the people at our table, ordered our dinner, praying it wasn't the proverbial rubber chicken from catering, and headed to the dance floor. After Janelle Monáe's song Make Me Feel and 2 slow dances, I had to make some room between us before she felt my ardor. Once again, I felt like an ass. We made a few silent auction bids in support of rescuing pit bulls, and she took my hand. Anthony, talk to me. She led me to an empty table at the back of the auditorium. We sat down, and she looked around the room for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. You're his best friend. He loves you like a brother. Tell me, do you think Mateo's all right? What was I supposed to say? I felt like I was breaking an unspoken trust by saying something. She must have noticed my hesitation. I know how close you are, and you may not want to say anything you think he wouldn't want me to know, but if he's keeping something from me, I need to know. Anthony, a few weeks ago I found him sleeping by the pool. He was so sunburned, he had to see a doctor. He slept for over 18 hours that day. When your equipment was delivered, he was talking to the delivery guys and started slurring his words. He said he was just tired, but I realized it was more than that. I was scared to death. I didn't know what to say. Stunned, I leaned back in my chair. Barb, why would he keep something like that from us? When we first flew here, he looked very sweaty and pale. I was concerned, and I noticed his hands were shaking. A bottle of medicine fell out of his pocket. He said he had the flu. A few days ago at dinner, his hand was shaking so badly that he tucked it under the table so you wouldn't see it. Supposedly, it's nerve damage from when he broke his arm. Did you see the label on the bottle? Do you know what kind of medicine it was or who prescribed it? No, I think it was a Abitoff, Something like that. What do we do? Maybe talk to him face to face? Barb replied, holding back tears. Let me figure this out a little first. She took my hand again. Thank you, Anthony. Would you mind if we skipped dinner? Maybe stop at the In-N-Out on the way home? I was joking with her, but there was a naturalness in saying home that scared me. This wasn't my home. It was their home. My home was in Colorado. She stood up, hugged me, and we left. We walked through the door with bags of in and out, and Mateo was lying where we'd left him, asleep on the couch. Had he gone to the meeting? Barbara walked over to him and took his hand in her left. With her right, she stroked it. Honey, Mateo? Blinking slowly, he looked at both of us and smiled. Back so soon? Did you bring me hamburgers and fries? A terrible longing settled in my stomach, and I didn't know why. It was a feeling of dread, and I couldn't believe myself that I could talk for a minute. Sure, I'm going to change out of your tuxedo. I don't want to pay for a cleaning service to get the grease and ketchup out of it. Barb looked puzzled. What? Anthony, it's your tuxedo. Mateo bought it for you last week. Turning my gaze from Barb to my cousin, I tried to suppress all the questions that were popping into my head. Oh, okay, well, let me go change. He'd known for a week that I'd need a tuxedo for tonight. It wasn't a last-minute meeting, if it was a meeting at all. After getting changed, we enjoyed our meal sitting by the pool. So, Maddie, what happened tonight? They called about a half hour after you left, canceled the meeting. That sucks. I hope you didn't miss the deal. No, I'm fine. Barbara gathered up some wrappers, put them in a bag, and headed for the kitchen. I saw her over Mateo's shoulder as she took his phone from the counter. She did a few scrolls and looked at me, shaking her head. I continued. So, they just called and canceled the meeting out of the blue? Does that happen a lot? Sometimes. I don't really run what people call a stable business. Life went on, and Mateo looked tired, but otherwise, everything was fine. I finished his vases and started working on a design to present to the councilwoman. I flew out on Friday night. It was amazing to spend time with the kids, just the four of us. As nice as the woman from social services was, her presence was like an anchor holding back my emotions. I took them for a go-kart ride and treated them to lunch before bringing them home. When the bitch came out of the house and started walking in my direction, I put the car in reverse and drove out of there. Humming on the radio during the 2-hour drive home, I was in a great mood. I needed to get more clients, and Jennifer's suggestion could help me a lot. I needed to get the results of the DNA tests, but that was due on Monday. I needed to find out what could be done with an annulment, and I had an appointment on Monday morning with the same attorney who had handled my divorce. I desperately needed to get laid before I embarrassed myself in front of Barbara again. I spent Sunday working on samples for the Women's Council and making a few extra products for Jennifer as a thank you. In the early evening, she stopped by with my mail, and we sat on the porch and chatted. She spoke softly but sternly when 2 children came up with the wagon. Be nice to them! The older child was a teenager, and the younger was a girl about 10 years old. The boy was black, and the girl was Asian. The boy had a permanent smile on his face. Hi, I'm Ted. We live on this block. Would you like to buy some vegetables? We grew them ourselves with my dad and sister. She didn't do too much. She's just a little girl. Oh, that's Wendy. I looked at Jennifer, who raised her eyebrows as if to say, don't screw it up. Sure, Ted. What do you have? We have cucumbers, tomatoes, basil, and peaches. But, listen, if you buy $5 worth, you get free recipes for everything you buy. It was a good weekend. Jennifer knew these kids, and they seemed sincere. Okay, give me $10 worth. Jennifer, do you want vegetables or peaches? Well, Anthony, I think I'll take $10 worth too. Ted picked out a bunch of vegetables and packed them into cardboard boxes, while Wendy used her phone to show me how to log into an app she seemed very proud of. It had recipes, pictures, and coupons for local grocery stores. We paid them, and they left satisfied. I gave Jennifer half of my purchase and made a salad for dinner. The morning meeting with the attorney went well, and she agreed with the other attorney's opinion that we had an excellent chance of getting an annulment. The DNA test results came back as UPS promised and confirmed that I was the father of all 3 of my children. I had no idea what the crazy bitch was talking about. Had she slept with so many guys on the side that she decided like there was no way I could be their father? I was thrilled. This was the best day I'd had in years. Until it wasn't. That evening, I got a call from Barbara. Anthony, you have to come home. I could hear the tears in her voice. Oh my God, Anthony, he has a brain tumor. The drive to Pueblo would have taken just under 2 hours. They had a direct flight leaving in 3 hours. I was on it. I didn't pack. I don't even think I locked the door. I was numb and couldn't think about anything. My mind raced through thoughts of our childhood, of him helping me after I found out about the bitch. Did his mom know? I was about to call to ask her to watch the kids. I might have accidentally told my aunt that her son might be dying. Walking into the bathroom on the airplane, I sat on the toilet and sobbed. I pulled myself together when someone knocked on the door. Splashing water on my face, I pulled myself together and returned to my seat. Feeling like an idiot, I stopped to look for Mateo at baggage claim. Hertz was kind enough to take my money, and I rented a small car. 90 minutes after leaving the airport, I was at their house. Why did I now think of this house as their house? What had changed with home? Sitting in the car in their driveway, I wondered if I had the energy for this. Screw the cousin, he was my brother. No child of my parents could be closer than Mateo. Getting out of the car, I walked to the door. Barbara looked both awful and beautiful as she answered my knock. She pulled me to her and hugged me, crying on my chest. Mateo was sitting on the couch. Hey, I'm still alive, folks. Can we stop crying for a while? I must have cried because I sat down in the chair and just watched him for a while. Eventually, he turned to me, indignant. Would you stop it? You're pissing me off to death. I continued to watch him. How long have you known? A long time, a long time. I closed my eyes for a second. You knew before I knew about the bitch? Yes, I'm not going to apologize for that. Mateo, why didn't you say anything? You were there for me when I needed you, and you took away my ability to be there for you. If things go badly, I have to live with that. Okay. I see where you're going with this, but the difference is, I could have done something for you. Nobody can do anything for me. I was wrong. I didn't scream. It felt like a giant had kicked me in the stomach. Barely holding back, I asked a question I didn't want an answer to. How many more? Probably less than 90 days. 90 days. I had less than 3 months left with the man I was willing to take a bullet for. What can I do? Do you want me to talk to your mom? He smiled sadly. No. Barb and I are flying with you next week to visit her. We'll talk to her when you're with the kids. By the way, did you find out anything? About the kids? Despite the pain, I smiled. Yes, they're mine. All of them. That's amazing, Aunt. It really is. It's fantastic. We'd love them all equally, but really, it's just great. Maddie, let me do something. What can I do? It's very selfish, but what the fuck, right? I might as well move all my chips to the center. If you could spend as much time with us as possible, not counting time with the kids, it would mean a lot. I'm a little scared, Aunt, and it's always been the 2 of us against the world, you know? It seemed I was a long way from screaming. I'm not going anywhere. Maybe I'll offer the bitch some money to take the kids to the airport so they can visit their aunt and uncle for a couple weekends. His tumor was inoperable. We spent the last few months trying to make him as happy and comfortable as possible. He showed me where his money was so I could give it to Barbara when he was gone. Not figuratively, giving me access to hidden accounts. He literally showed me his money. He buried bar after bar of gold in a property he owned outside of Ontario, in the desert. My ex-wife called a few weeks after I found out about Mateo's tumor. It was a strange conversation, and I felt like I was talking to a person in a capsule. Anthony, please don't hang up on me. I'm not asking for money, I just want information. At least she took a new approach. Okay, what do you want to know? I need to know about skateboarding. It's I need to get closer to our kids, and that's all Jimmy talks about. I didn't know what to say. Was she trying to play me? Why do you care? Look, I'm trying, okay? I'm trying. I know the kids always preferred you, but I thought I was at least in there somewhere in their hearts. Dad was always number one, but I thought I was at least a strong number two. Please, no dirty jokes. I was wrong. They don't know me, don't love me, and don't even care that they don't love me. I'm not blaming them or you. It's not easy, you know? I know I haven't been what I could have been, but I want to be better. Can you help me? Anthony, are you still here? Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just confused for a second. Look, let me think about it and call you back tomorrow. Okay. Uh-huh. Anthony? Thank you. Okay, I'm glad you called, Camille. It was just weird. I gathered basic information about what our kids like, including YouTube links, local skateboard, camping, and comic book stores, and Amazon links to textbooks for each activity. The next day, we had a polite conversation, and I emailed her the information. 2 weeks later, Aunt Sylvie moved in with us. I insisted she take the guest room, and I set up a futon in the workshop in the backyard. I worked half days at a time. Jennifer still looked after the house for me and mailed packages for Mateo. She knew us when we were boys and she was in high school. She remembered his love of chile verde, green chili tomato, and sent several packages each week. They came in triple-sealed Tupperware packaging with same-day delivery. I don't know how much it cost her, but when Mateo barely pecked at any other food, he ate every ounce of what she sent. Back in Pueblo, I talked to my lawyer. It turned out that having been married for almost 2 decades and being the father of her 3 children, an annulment was virtually impossible. If I wasn't the father, it would be a different story. I was fine with that. Paying her child support for 3 years was worth it for the kids to be mine. The kids and I were about to drive to Los Angeles when Camille stopped me at the door. Kids, wait in the car. Your daddy will be right out. Whether they liked her or not, they obeyed. She turned to me, staring at the floor in silence. Camille, I have to go. She raised her hand to touch me, stopped, and lowered it again. You know better than anyone that I'm not the best cook, but hold on a second. She picked up a large box and held it out to me. Remember when we were kids and there were 7 or 8 of us? We'd go to Sweeney's, chip in some money, and buy a couple peanut butter pies and a Coke? Mateo loved those. Mine's probably pretty bad, but give it to him anyway. Tell him I tried, okay? I'd forgotten about that. I'd forgotten a lot of things about Camilla. I guess I needed it to survive. She was right. He loved them. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. That was, nice of you. Anthony, I'm sorry for everything. It's okay. I appreciate what you said. Have a safe flight. What the hell just happened? Who is that man? Mateo enjoyed socializing with the kids, and he even ate some of the pie. The flavor wasn't bad. He found it hard to believe there wasn't an ulterior motive behind her behavior, but he wasn't about to look a gift pie in the mouth. Questioning the children lightly, he was convinced that she was really trying. There was a thaw in their emotions toward her, which I suppose was a good thing. He asked me to escort Barb to another charity event. It was a circus for terminally ill children. Barbara was on the board of directors, and he insisted she go. Aunt, she needs to get out. See if you can get her to smile. It's only a few hours. I didn't have to put on a tuxedo this time. We did have fun and even managed to laugh. I felt guilty every time it happened, thinking of Mateo at home and the poor kids around us. The event was held at an animal sanctuary, and there were tons of people. Everyone seemed to know and like Barbara, including most of the single men. She talked to everyone who interacted with her, including most of the single men. This was more annoying than it should have been. Mateo began to feel the need for equipment to repair the house. I don't know what kind of repairs he was thinking about, spending most of his time in bed. But he would send Barbara to get what he needed and ask me to go and help carry it. We were walking down the aisle in the Lowe's store when she, without turning to me, asked, "Does he think he's playing subtly?" I laughed. I really hope he doesn't. How much do you want to bet he'll say we bought the wrong stuff and we should go to Home Depot? Maybe he'll insist we eat lunch while we're gone. She laughed back, and we found the things we needed and headed out. We were on our way home when she turned to the elephant in the room. Anthony, you know I care about you, right? But this... I know. He's a good man. Mateo's trying to do the right thing. Let's make him happy and keep doing his little missions. And when this is over, I'll go back to Colorado." She was silent for a moment before answering with a soft, sad, two-syllable response. "Okay." He died 3 weeks later. I stayed for a week, trying to help Barbara. If I hadn't, I would have lost myself in grief. Aunt Sylvie stayed another week, after which she went home. We all promised to see each other regularly, but nothing came of it. 6 months after he died, I received a package in the mail. It contained an itinerary with a ticket for a 2-week cruise and a DVD. I assumed the video had information about the cruise ship and perhaps details about the various ports where it would stop. It could hardly have been worse than the one I got last time. The DVD was inserted into the laptop, and my cousin, my brother, who looked frail and was lying in his bed, appeared on the screen. "Hi, Anthony. Mom's helping me do this. Mom, say hi." The perspective changed, and Aunt Sylvie waved to the camera. Turning back again, she focused on her son. "I'm going to tell you 2 things with certainty, and then I'm going to ask you a favor. 1, you're an idiot. The second is that Barbara loves you. She's always loved you, but only as a brother. Things have changed in the last few months. I know her better than anyone. She's in love with you. I know you better than anyone. You love her." "Listen to me carefully, Anthony. I want this to happen. I couldn't be clearer. I know you'll feel like it's some kind of betrayal if you're together. I'll say it again. This is what I want. I love you both and Mom more than anyone else on this planet. Please do this for me. If you doubt my sincerity, call Mom. Talk to her. Anthony, if you love me, if you respect me, go on this cruise. She needs you, and you need her." "I love you, man. I'll see you again someday." It was a beautiful room with a big balcony that must have cost him a fortune. I was alone, but that was okay. I couldn't expect her to feel the way I did. She was rich, beautiful, and sophisticated. I was comfortable looking good and being a redneck. It was okay, it really was. I was going to enjoy the cruise and toast Mateo at every port along the way. For the first dinner on board, I wore the tuxedo he bought me. It was a little disappointing. From the movies I'd seen, I expected everyone to be dressed upscale. I sat down and introduced myself to the others at the table. We were chatting when the men and a few women looked over my shoulder, staring past me. "This seemed to be where I was supposed to be?" I turned and stood up. She was wearing that same red dress from the charity auction. She was the most beautiful woman here, or maybe anywhere. Smiling, I pushed back her chair. I swallowed hard before answering. "Yeah, I think so."